Have you ever wondered if your listeners are thinking the same thing about you? When is this over? You may not be as influential as you think you are. Now, I know it's a really big, bold statement because you don't even know me yet, but what if I was right? If you got a chance to take a closer look at what your listeners see in here rather than what you believe to be true. I promise you, in the short time frame we have together, you are going to walk out of here being able to apply practical and immediate how-tos to how you show up, how you stay showed up, and what you leave behind. But to clarify, to make sure we're all on the same page first, I just spent the last 4 years writing book number 2, and it took me that time because I really wanted to figure it out. I wanted to figure out, why do some people have influence and others don't? So tell me if you can relate to this. Here's what influence is not. How many times have you been in a conversation, maybe it's a virtual conversation, one-on-one, meeting, any medium, and the person who's leading the conversation is so caught up in their own dialogue, half the room is down in their technical gadgets, there's side conversations going on, and the person leading the conversation decides to talk louder, faster, to torture you even more in hopes they'll eventually find the point. Some of you are smiling. Can you relate to that? That's not influence. Influence is not something you turn on and you turn off. It doesn't work. It's not authentic, and it's not consistent. Here's what influence is. Body language and messaging, they are consistent Monday to Monday. People never have to guess who's going to show up. I mean, we're already, what, end of March? January 1, what usually happens on January 1? I'm going to conquer the world, right? And we set these New Year's resolutions. Do you know that by January 15th of every year, 1% still have the New Year's resolution? 15 days into the year, 1%. That means the majority of us in this room right now are already saying, I'll get healthy in June. Like we've already lost that. That's not it. Influence is that no matter where you show up, it's always consistent. Here's the other part of influence. That you've got this ability to drive people to take action long after the interaction has occurred. Now, by both those definitions, that's going to take a little work, and I want to help you. I'm going to give you these practical how-tos that I promise you, you are going to be able to use the minute you and I depart ways, when you're networking in these hallways, the sessions you have this afternoon, in your personal life, your professional life, because from the time you've stepped out of bed this morning to where you're seated right now, how often have you already communicated? Just nod your head. Like, we do it 24/7, but I'm so intrigued with this concept of how much time and focus we really put into how people experience us rather than what we believe to be true. So here's your first. There's 3 key drivers that are needed if you're going to have influence Monday to Monday. You got to be all in. Here's your first. Now, isn't it funny how we know that's important? I'm guessing there's not a single person here that wouldn't agree. Do you ever notice how feedback is flawed? I mean, think about it. How many times have you asked, perhaps after some type of interaction that you've asked, how did I do? What do you often hear in response? Great, good job. And you walk around life saying that everyone says how good you are. You realize that's not feedback, correct? I mean, in some cases, who's to say they're lying to you? They're lying to you because they don't have the confidence to say, it takes you a long time to get to the point. Every time you're talking to me, you're doing something besides connecting and engaging. Are you ready for a little feedback today? Just say yes. Why not? And when we depart ways, if you ever hear good, nice job, and I'm not saying you're not good, but you can't do anything with that, ask, what is one thing I did where you gained the greatest impact? What's one thing I can do to give you more value? So you're going to get a little feedback in here. If you join me this afternoon for the deep dive, you're going to get even more feedback. Now, feedback is built off of your second key driver. It doesn't just hang out there by itself. Now, I'm not talking about any practice here. Any of you ever watched the TED.com videos? You've seen them? Yep, been there, done it, yes? Check out, if you're not familiar, her name is Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, and she's on the most viewed list. She talks about how before she stepped on that TED.com stage, she practiced 200 times. Steve Jobs talks about the many times that he would step on a stage, he would practice for 4 hours on that stage. You're not born with influence. You've got to work at it. Your title doesn't matter. Your length of experience in this financial industry doesn't matter. Is the body language consistent, and do people build that reputation of you that you're proud of. Now, I'm not going to carve out additional time in your day. I realize you don't have it. Everything I give you, you're going to be able to apply every time you wake up if you choose to. It's so similar to, how many of you have ever played a sport? You know, something that takes muscle memory? Yeah, tell me you've got a life outside of, okay. So just shout them out. What are some sports you participated in? Squash? Baseball? Golf? I can only hear half of you, but I did hear golf. Any golfers? I think there's always golfers. All right, let's say we've all been playing golf for 10 plus years, and you're tired. You're tired of your significant others and friends always telling you what to do. Can you relate to that concept? And you hire a coach, someone who specializes in this. Probably the first step that coach is going to ask you to take is, I want to see your style. I'm not here to change you today. Influence is not about changing who you are. It's about enhancing who you are to make sure you stop creating distractions, creating it difficult for people to follow what you're trying to ask them to do. Well, you swing the club a couple of times. What does the coach then start to do to you? Tell you to take up a different sport? There's better options for you. No, they start to rip it apart, and this is where a lot of my clients give up. So if you're like most audiences that I interact with, I am guessing today you will get uncomfortable with me. And that's exactly where I want you to go. I want you to get so uncomfortable with me that you can't wait for me to go away. Is that cool? I mean, as leaders, you guys, you know this. You've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, let go of what you know to be true, and stay open. Because what's going to work for you will not work for you. Are you cool with that? You can do that? So this is the hardest part. I think feedback and practice, because we don't think about it. The hardest part, though, is that third key driver. And this is where I'm going to help you out to make sure it's practical for you. All right, I understand that you all lead. You've got people that you're leading. How many of you does this drive you nuts, accountability? I mean, your clients, your agents, people around you, they can tell when you're not holding yourself accountable for your own development. Therefore, I am going to give you 3 accountability challenges I promise you you are going to be able to use when we depart ways. Sound like a plan? And I'll give you more a little later on today. The challenge with this idea of feedback, practice, and accountability is ourselves. I've learned early in my career that the only way I can prove to individuals how much influence they have is to give them the opportunity to see and hear through the eyes and ears of their listeners. A couple of months ago, I live in Chicago, and I was working with a CEO, and he calls me up and he says, Stacey, I think I need your help. I only get a chance to interact with my entire company twice a year. I want to make sure that I come across credible and trustworthy. Can you help me? The first thing I did is I said, I need to videotape you. When we sit down to watch his video playback, we're maybe 10 seconds into the playback, and he looks at me and he says, I bet you wonder how I ever became a CEO. And it's one of those awkward moments, folks, where you're wondering, do I tell him I agree with that, or just let that go? When I asked him what's sitting behind that comment, he says to me, when I watch the playback, I just realized I never get feedback. My executive team is always telling me how great I am, and I've never seen myself on a playback. Let's test this out. How many of you, let's go with the last 2 months. How many of you in the last 2 months, you have been recorded? For professional reasons, though. Did you notice how half the hands went down? What are you guys doing out there? Now, all kidding aside, if you're not experiencing yourself through how others around you experience you, could you be determining your level of influence, your reputation, on how you feel rather than on fact? I have a speech coach. His name is Lou Heckler. Some of you got it, and I'm not kidding you. So Lou, I'm going through this whole coaching myself right now, and he's kind of ripping me apart. I'm hanging down here and waiting for him to build me up. And he was sharing with me how he was flying to a conference getting ready to present, and his seatmate happens to be a psychologist. During the flight, Lou decides to ask the psychologist, what is it? What really is the key to someone's improvement? Individuals who are willing to embrace their own ignorance. That's pretty true, isn't it? Which leads us to the very first element in this model. If you're not self-aware, how do you know? If you didn't raise your hand that you're really recording yourself, how do you know? How do you know what everyone else is saying behind your back? Here's the deal. Reputation is usually what people are saying behind your back. Here's the good news. You get to determine what people say about you every day just by how you show up. Now, leading up today, Bonnie Godsman was coaching me, and we had several conversations so I could get to know what you do and who you are. And she said to me, you really are living this world of change. With technology and some challenges, here's what I think you're living. You're living a world of new work called noise. 24/7 we receive messages, don't we? I mean, how many messages have you already received today? Or shouldn't have I brought it up? I mean, you know when you're in this room, your emails are piling up, you've got text messages coming in, it's 24/7. So what are you going to do to stand out from the noise? And based on what I know about what you do in your industry, here's where I think a lot of us struggle. Is lack of brevity. There is not a single person in this room who's not been guilty of saying too much. Would you agree? How many of you feel like you ramble? Come on, be honest. And you're out in right field, you're out in left field, and you're wondering how in the world you got there. And then your subconscious, if you're even aware of it, your subconscious lies to you and says, keep talking. Torture them even more. Eventually you'll figure it out. Don't we do that? So if you want to frustrate your listeners, whoever you are trying to influence, if you want to get people to interrupt you, if you want to jeopardize your brevity, all you have to do is start using these words and peppering them in your speech. Now, I bet some of you right now are thinking, that's my entire vocabulary. I don't even know how to speak without it. Have you ever noticed what is common sense is not common practice? That this isn't rocket science. How many times have you seen this before? But I'm so intrigued by we still don't get it. We feel that the more we speak, the smarter we sound. Start thinking and speaking in bullet point sentences. Silence sometimes is the right answer. How many impromptu conversations have you already had today? Besides all of them. Right? And everyone always says to me, well, Stacey, when I know what to say, I don't use extra words. Yes, you do. Unless you're constantly thinking about what you're saying, we tend to go into this mindset of, I need to tell you what I think you need. Adaptability is key for your industry. I mean, think about how you're changing lives. I mean, truly. That the key to your industry is identifying what do they really need. Let them do most of the talking. Now, like any sport, this would be the biggest waste of time if I was teaching you golf from up here and you never got to touch the golf club, right? So I'm going to totally go out on a limb here. Because I know you're going to get more impact if you try something. Are you in? Just fake it if not, all right? Here's what I want you to do. It's going to be really quick. You've got 1 minute and 30 seconds. I just want to increase your awareness. And the only way I know how to do it is for you to try it. So you're going to turn to your right or your left. So you've got someone to talk to. So choose the one that looks better. The one on the right or the one on the left, right? Now, before you go there, let me give you a little how-to here. You have 1 minute, 30 seconds, that's it, to briefly tell each other what you do day in and day out, just to give you some content. Whoever you are talking to, you are officially going to be a coach. As leaders, you know how to be coaches. Coaches, I want you in their face. Every time you hear them start a sentence with so, and, but. Anytime you hear their sentences start to be paragraphs and there's no breaks in between their sentences, let them know, coach them. Got it? So you're going to be in each other's faces. You're coaching on what is filler and what's not. You've got 1 minute, 30 seconds to do that. Go ahead. Thank you for doing that very quick interaction. Let's come back together as a group. Let's come back together as a group just to check in what's going on out there. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap once. We're back? All right, let's do this. How many of you, with the help of your coach, depending on how good your coach was, just figured out that it's better off you never talk again? You're much more clear that way. People will argue this idea of brevity, and we'll dive deeper into it this afternoon. But when you really start saying less, get rid of the words that don't have impact, they take up space, you will always have more impact with what you leave. So here's your first accountability challenge. How about for 1 week, someone in your personal life, your professional life, ask them to coach you like you just did? How many of you have someone in your personal life that can't wait to give you feedback? You got it. You ask that, they'll honor it. Here's your second. This one's bigger. This is where who's all in and who's not. How about before 5 o'clock today, you audio or video record yourself on your phone? Just do it for like a minute. Here's the deal. If you never do that, you will continue to go through life guessing how your communication comes across rather than how you feel. I literally, after my introduction this morning, I could have saved you 30 minutes. I could have stood up here and said, here's the deal. You want influence Monday to Monday? All you have to do is record yourself. Thanks for listening. That's it. That's all you've got to do. Because it's all about being consistent. Your second element.